You know, for decades, artificial intelligence was basically defined by what it couldn't do. I mean, sure, computers could crunch numbers vastly faster than any human alive, and yeah, they could beat world champions at chess in these really highly constrained games, but they couldn't understand basic, everyday common sense. They could recognize complex patterns in massive data sets, but they couldn't just carry on a natural conversation or connect the dots across different subjects the way a toddler can. And that limitation, that defined the entire field for generations. But then, almost overnight, everything changed. We experienced this sudden, massive paradigm shift. Out of nowhere, AI began writing really compelling essays, generating complex software code, solving tricky math problems, creating these hyper-realistic images, translating languages in real time, and even helping out with cutting-edge scientific research.
Welcome to this explainer. So, behind the scenes of this sudden explosion in AI capabilities we're seeing every day, the world's most powerful tech companies have kicked off a race unlike anything the industry has ever seen. And we are not talking about building a marginally better search engine here. They aren't just trying to launch a slightly faster smartphone. The stakes are vastly higher than that. They are pouring their massive resources into creating something that a lot of researchers believe could actually become the most important technology in human history: artificial general intelligence.
Here's how we're going to break this down today. First, the AI awakening. Second, defining the ultimate prize. Then, a decades-long journey, followed by the global AI battlefield, and finally, an unknown destination.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the AI awakening, an overnight paradigm shift.
Which brings us to part two, defining the ultimate prize. What exactly is AGI? So, with all these massive language models dropping left and right, things that seemed decades away suddenly feel, well, entirely within reach. If billions of dollars are flowing into this pursuit, we really need to nail down what these companies are actually trying to build. And what's wild is how broad this definition has to be. Unlike today's AI systems, which are super specialized and really only excel at specific tasks, artificial general intelligence, or AGI, is an entirely different beast. It's generally described as a system capable of learning, reasoning, adapting, and solving problems across a wide range of domains at a level comparable to or even beyond human expertise. But here's the catch. There is actually no universally accepted definition for it. Experts right now are actively debating exactly what criteria would qualify a system as true AGI. Does it need to show independent learning? What about true creativity? Does it need emotional understanding or the ability to plan long-term? The consensus just isn't there yet.
But even with that uncertainty surrounding the exact definition, the pursuit is moving at absolute breakneck speed. Why? Well, because the first entity to build a practical AGI platform is going to possess a tool capable of fundamentally rewriting the rules of the modern world. Literally. We are talking about a technology that could single-handedly reshape entire industries right from the ground up. It could dramatically accelerate scientific discovery, think curing diseases in months instead of decades. It could fundamentally alter national security paradigms and completely transform the global economy in ways that are just incredibly difficult for us to even imagine right now.
Okay, let's look at part three, a decades-long journey from the 1950s to today.
Because look, the road AI has traveled has been incredibly long and bumpy. This race didn't just start the day ChatGPT launched. The origins actually stretch back more than a half-century. Back in the summer of 1956, at this famous conference at Dartmouth College, early AI researchers had a massive amount of optimism. They genuinely believed that creating human-level intelligence might only take a few decades of concerted effort. But progress ended up being way slower than expected. Computers just didn't have the processing power. Data was incredibly scarce, and the algorithms really struggled with even simple real-world problems. What followed were these periods of deep, crushing disappointment. People in the industry actually call them AI winters, where funding completely dried up and public enthusiasm just vanished. But the research itself never actually stopped. Dedicated scientists at universities kept tinkering with machine learning, and governments quietly kept funding these long-term projects in the background. But then we hit this massive turning point. Basically, three major technological trends finally converged, and it acted like a giant catalyst. First off, computing power became dramatically cheaper and infinitely more accessible. Second, the internet generated enormous, just unprecedented amounts of digital data, which acted as the perfect fuel for these systems. And third, new neural network techniques started producing remarkable, undeniable results. Suddenly, researchers realized that if they just scaled up the computation, the data, and the model size, they could unlock completely unexpected abilities. That single discovery changed the industry's priorities forever.
That takes us to part four, the global AI battlefield, corporations, and nations.
So, with the tech finally catching up to the theory, the absolute heavyweights stepped into the ring. Companies that used to treat AI as just a side project, now it's their absolute core strategic focus. Microsoft didn't just throw money at it, they aggressively wove generative AI right into the fabric of their entire software ecosystem, locking down these advanced partnerships to stay ahead. Google obviously hit the accelerator in response, mobilizing their vast research divisions and rapidly expanding their own family of foundation models to protect their turf. Meta took a slightly different but equally urgent approach, throwing billions of dollars into OpenAI research and building out massive computing infrastructure to level the playing field. Amazon leaned into it by strengthening its cloud AI capabilities, setting itself up as the indispensable host for all these colossal models. And it's not just the legacy tech giants moving at warp speed here. You've got these agile startups like Anthropic and XAI entering the race with incredibly ambitious research agendas, proving that a highly focused team can absolutely rival the biggest corporations on Earth.
But here's the thing. No matter what strategy these companies are using, they all share one inescapable bottleneck: compute. Training these frontier AI models takes a mind-boggling amount of computational resources. We are talking about thousands, sometimes literally tens of thousands of advanced graphics processing units, or GPUs, operating together inside these massive data centers for weeks or even months at a time. To put that into perspective for you, the electricity footprint to run just one of these cutting-edge data centers can rival an entire medium-sized city. This relentless demand for computational fuel has completely transformed hardware suppliers, especially NVIDIA, into the absolute critical multi-trillion-dollar backbone of the whole AI ecosystem.
But, hardware alone isn't going to win this thing. You actually need the human minds to build the architecture. And because of that, top-tier talent has rapidly become one of the world's most valuable strategic resources. The fierce competition for specialized human minds has kicked off a massive, totally unprecedented recruiting war. Leading AI researchers are routinely getting recruited with compensation packages worth millions of dollars. Honestly, they're rivaling professional athletes at this point. Universities are fighting intensely to produce the next generation of experts, while private companies are just poaching top professors straight out of academia. Governments are frantically expanding their investments in AI education and advanced research too, because they realize that without the right minds, all the computing power in the world is basically useless.
Which brings us to a much broader reality. This is way bigger than just a corporate turf war now. It has rapidly evolved into a high-stakes contest for technological leadership and economic survival between actual nations. The geopolitical stakes are massive, and they're playing out on a global scale. The United States remains home to many of the world's leading AI companies and research institutions, and they're driving a massive portion of the current innovation. Meanwhile, China has officially made artificial intelligence a top-tier national priority, investing really heavily in domestic capabilities, cultivating specialized talent, and rapidly expanding both research and industrial adoption. And across the globe, in Europe, Japan, South Korea, and several Middle Eastern countries, they're actively ramping up their own sovereign investments. They fully recognize that advanced AI is going to heavily dictate their future economic competitiveness and their strategic independence on the world stage.
And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, An Unknown Destination, Questions and Uncertainties.
With progress moving this fast all over the globe, we're staring down some pretty profound unknowns. I mean, it's the defining debate among experts right now. How close are we to actually achieving AGI? The honest, no-nonsense answer? Nobody knows. Some researchers firmly believe that our current approaches, just combining larger models with better reasoning techniques and vastly more data, will eventually get us to systems that approach general intelligence. To them, it's literally just a matter of scale. But other experts argue just as passionately that hitting a wall is absolutely inevitable. They think entirely new, fundamental scientific breakthroughs are going to be required before machines can truly understand the physical world with the kind of flexibility, intuition, and reliability that we humans have.
But, history actually gives us a really helpful lens to look through here. Transformative, world-changing tech almost never arrives with perfect clarity or everyone agreeing on it. Consider some historical parallels: electricity, aviation, nuclear energy, the internet. All of these were dual-use technologies that fundamentally changed the trajectory of human civilization, and it's really worth remembering that in their early days, innovations like electricity or early airplanes were viewed by the public with both incredible awe and absolute terror. They inspired wild optimism about some utopian future right alongside deep existential concern. And artificial general intelligence? It is poised to follow that exact same historical path.
And because of that immense power, we're seeing some massive societal risks being debated right alongside the tech race. First and foremost, how do we even govern increasingly capable AI systems? As they start assisting in everything from everyday healthcare decisions to massive civil engineering projects, our traditional regulatory frameworks are really struggling to keep pace with the sheer speed of the innovation.
Plus, who exactly is responsible when they inevitably make a mistake? Think about it. When we deploy systems that operate with near-human-level reasoning in really high-stakes environments, the legal and ethical liabilities get incredibly murky. If an AGI system makes a bad call on a medical diagnosis or messes up a critical infrastructure optimization, where exactly does the fault lie? Is it with the user, the developer, the company that provided the hardware?
And that leads us to what is probably the ultimate hurdle, the alignment problem. How on earth can societies ensure that these super powerful technologies actually remain aligned with human values? It's a problem that humanity absolutely must solve before a true AGI system is fully realized and deployed. We have to ensure the system's goals do not diverge from the safety and well-being of the people it's actually meant to serve.
Look, whether AGI arrives in 10 years, 50 years, or ends up taking an entirely different form than what researchers expect right now, one reality is pretty obvious today. The pursuit of general intelligence has become one of the absolute defining technological competitions of the 21st century. It's heavily reshaping investment, research, geopolitics, education, and global business long before the finish line is even in sight. Ultimately, the greatest impact of this race might not just be who crosses that finish line first. It might be how the journey itself fundamentally transforms our world along the way. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. As we pour billions of dollars and our absolute brightest minds into creating a machine that can outthink us, what is our world going to look like when we finally do cross that finish line?